Hello, my name is Catarina Sup, and welcome to my podcast. I am a current sophomore at the College of DuPage, and I am taking a class called Intro to Domestic International Transactional Terrorism. I first joined this class because I thought I could learn more about the history of terrorism, because I do enjoy history, and I definitely got out of this class educated on terrorism and also learning how to educate other people on terrorism and the prevention of terrorism. When we think of terrorism, we usually think of things that have happened in the United States, such as 9/11, but there are so many different forms of terrorism, and one of those forms is lone wolf terrorism. Lone wolf terrorism may be an unfamiliar phrase. I didn't know this phrase before I took this class, so I'm going to be walking you through what lone wolf terrorism is and how it starts and examples, where it commonly occurs, and I also will be focusing on my policy recommendations for combating lone wolf terrorism. Let's start with what I think is the easiest part, the definition of lone wolf terrorism. So, in my textbook, The Essentials of Terrorism, Concepts and Controversies by Gus Martin defines the lone wolf model to be a designation describing political violence by individuals who are motivated by an ideology but who have no membership in a terrorist organization. I like this definition a lot, but I think it's always important to look at other definitions and other sources and kind of reading those definitions and then coming up with your own, putting them together. So I'm also going to provide another definition from the Office of Justice Programs. The Office of Justice Programs is an agency of the United States Department of Justice that focuses on crime prevention. I personally think that this definition is a wee bit better, in my opinion, a little bit easier to understand. So here you go. Someone who acts alone in a terrorist attack without the help or encouragement of a government or a terrorist organization. I prefer this definition over Gus Martin's definition just because this definition provides the example of the government too, not just a terrorist organization, because governments can have influence on individuals that leads them to doing terrorist attacks. Lone wolf terrorism always starts with one person. That's why it's lone wolf terrorism. That one person can either have their own ideology, or they can see things online that make them believe that someone else's ideology, such as other terrorist organizations or government organizations. Oftentimes, terrorist organizations will put out videos on media, and then they will be spread, and then someone will find them and they will take a liking to those videos and they'll continue with their search of those videos. When we look at those who are becoming lone wolf terrorists, a lot of them have similar qualities or red flags in a sense. Oftentimes there is a lot of change in behavior, such as frantically researching, taking up new hobbies, such as weapons like guns and going to the gun range more often than maybe they did before, or they had never done that before, or spending lots of time working out more than they used to work out. showing a big interest in anti-government or anti-organizations. A big misconception about lone wolf terrorists is that they are unstable mentally or they have a lot of mental illnesses, but studies show that that's not actually the case. They are fine mentally, they just have a very strong ideology and they believe that what they believe is right. So, countering that can be very important and very helpful in preventing. I will talk about that later in the podcast, though. I mentioned the media earlier, and the media can play a huge role in creating a lone wolf terrorist. It can start by a simple search on Reddit, and then that person can go and find horrible videos of terrorist organizations trying to encourage or promote their violence. Really quickly, I just wanted to add some examples of a lone wolf attack. Often, unfortunately, shootings, mass shootings, car suicide bombings, bombings of big public places. All of these are horrible acts that are often very unexpected. These attacks happen globally, everywhere in the world, unfortunately. So it's really important that we come together and combat lone wolf terrorism. So that brings me into the next thing, my policy recommendations. Obviously, I can't create policies, so these are just what I would recommend. First, I would start with the importance and the value of community. Having a community outreach program in different towns and cities would be extremely helpful. I know that with DVE, domestic violent extremism, there are some government branches that help with like community outreach, and I think those should be funded and supported. And putting in research to understand what is effective with community outreach, what prevents, what helps, I think that's very important. Another idea is an increase in security in public events, large public events such as concerts, sporting events, festivals. I understand that the logistics of that could be kind of hard, but for example, like requiring security facilities to have one security guard per, 30 people. And this would hopefully just help with surveillance and making sure that everyone's safe and there's nothing abnormal. I think, unfortunately, in this new age of terrorism, these big events where everyone is at are huge targets for a lone wolf terrorist attack. I think big public events like these have also created some stress for people who are attending them, so increasing security would hopefully lessen that stress, making everyone feel a little bit more comfortable. Another big section of my policy recommendations would be education. Educating the public, parents, and students and children about lone wolf terrorism. First, let's start with the public, the general public. So this could be a flyer in the bathroom. It could be free classes at town hall, educating community members who are interested in bettering their community. Another huge group of people that we need to educate about lone wolf terrorism is parents and teachers. Those who are influencing children's lives and seeing everyday acts of children. Educating parents and educators about the warning signs of lone wolf terrorism can be extremely important and helpful. Informing these parents that these behaviors are things that they need to keep an eye on or possibly even seek help for. It can be really hard on parents because they don't want to rat their child out in a sense. So, informing them that there are people who are willing to help and ways that they can help their child can be a less scary process than just immediately running to the police. I also think it could be helpful to educate educators about lone wolf terrorism and terrorism in general, and again, the warning signs in our children, and also the warning signs in media. So, what is an example of encouragement from a terrorist organization? Letting teachers know what that looks like so that they can help their students the best way. Now, on to students and children. Protecting children is super important and they are our future, and it's really important that we prioritize them. Watching the discussion from the Homeland Security Training Institute at College of DuPage, I found out that it is definitely up to debate to when we should educate our children on terrorism and combating terrorism and combating lone wolf terrorism. Some people are arguing for first grade because that's when people are using cell phones and iPads, and some people are arguing for high school so that they can understand fully. And in my personal opinion, I think we should be teaching our students and children about the dangers of terrorism and how to prevent terrorism at the age of like 10 to 11, which would be 5th grade. Why I think we should do it at 5th grade is because they're stepping into a new stage of their life, middle school, and they're becoming preteens, and I think that they are kind of grasping a little bit of what life is like. And I definitely think that there are online more. The kids at my camp, at least, are really online. Around 5th grade, they have phones or they have iPads. So I think putting in a program through the school that is mandatory would be really good around 5th grade. In this program, it would hopefully look like, well, if I could decide what it would look like, it would start with showing students what is terrorism online. Like things that are showing up and that are abnormal and that it's almost like a red flag, like I said earlier. Like, this is a terrorist organization that is trying to recruit me. But it might not be as easy for a child to understand that. So helping them understand by teaching them how to identify those things would be really good. I think another thing that could be helpful is kind of showing them how easy it is, in a sense, for these people, for anyone, to be corrupted by the things that they see on social media. I think that could be really helpful, and that could also be a part of maybe a social media program or like a bullying program, but I do think that this should specifically have its own program. Another thing is I think that having the parents involved in this program could be really helpful too. So maybe the parents have to sign off on something, or the parents have to attend one class with them. I could think this could be really helpful because it's the parent and the child learning together and recognizing that it is an issue together. Because not every student shares what they learn at school with their parents, and I think this could be really good for those specific students. Overall, I feel like education is the most important way to combat and counter terrorism, specifically lone wolf terrorism. So just again, educating the general public, parents, educators, And what I think is the most important is children and students. Lone wolf terrorism is very scary and it's often very unexpected. So I think it's important that we all learn about it and that we share our information and knowledge with each other. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great day.